Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Nora, Unitarian Universalist Church. Welcome on Facebook Live, and welcome here in the sanctuary in rural Hanska. We have a full house. It is wonderful. COVID-19 struck the Hansen family Thanksgiving. Abe, who was to have been our pianist today, is in quarantine because his parents tested positive, and Sally, who was to be the backup pianist, tested positive herself. So we have a music-free service this morning. There are some announcements in your order of service. Next Sunday is a program committee Sunday. You'll hear from some of your fellow members and friends about their faith. And also, is it a surprise? No, it's not. It says it right there, bell choir, for the first time here at Nora Church, so you won't want to miss that service. The Christmas Eve service, which we will have, and it will be at 5 o'clock, we don't know yet whether it will be here in the sanctuary or only via the internet. If you have not yet, let us know your intentions for Christmas Eve. Whether you would come in person if there's an in-person service, or come online, or are not planning to participate at all, please email Brooke and let her know. If you've already let us know, you don't need to do it again. That will just further confuse matters. Are there any additional announcements this morning? Any program committee? Oh, Group A on the organ side, Group B on the piano side today. We will read our hymns. Every day is a fresh beginning. Listen, my soul, to the glad refrain, and spite of old sorrows and older sinning, troubles forecasted, and possible pain, take heart with the day and begin again. As those in days of old lit bonfires to strengthen the sun, so do we light our chalice to strengthen the light of truth, the fire of justice, and the warmth of love in this place and in our hearts and minds and homes. Our first hymn is all of our hymns today are Advent hymns. They are not Christmas carols. The first one is People Look East. Group A, People Look East, the time is near, of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair and as you are able, trim the hearth and set the table. People look east, love the guests who's on the way. For worlds be glad, though earth is bare, one more seed is planted there. Give up your strength, the seed to nourish, that may force, the flower may flourish. People look east, love the rose is on the way. Stars keep the watch when night is dim. One more light the bowl shall bring. Shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east, love the stars is on the way. It's time for our story. story this morning is called Winter Cake. Where can it be? Thought Thomas. Maybe I left it outside. He looked in the tall grasses. He walked around the house. What are you looking for, Thomas? Asked Lucy. Have you lost something? Yes, said Thomas. Yes, I have. Just this morning I fetched my fruits from my special fruit drying spot. Such a beautiful basket of dried up fruits. Apples, berries, and plums, apricots, grapes, and cherries. And now I can't find it. I must have set it down somewhere, but I've looked everywhere. Twice. He looked around as if the basket of fruits might suddenly appear, but it didn't. Lucy looked around too. How mysterious, she said. I won't be able to make the winter cake, said Thomas. A winter's eve without winter cake. I ask you, what kind of holiday is that? The holiday isn't only about winter cake, said Lucy. I am bereft, said Thomas, forlorn. An icy blast lifted Lucy briefly from the ground. I better get going, Thomas, she said. It's starting to bluster. But don't be sad. We'll have a wonderful holiday. We always do. I don't see how, Thomas called out as she flew away. I honestly don't, he said to himself. Perhaps I should have invited her inside, he added, as the winds grew stronger and snowier. Fly safely, he said softly. He knew she could no longer hear him, but he hoped it would help. Worried, he stepped into his tree and shut the door. The gentle snowfall had thickened into a storm. Lucy flew into snowflakes the size of her face, and there were so many of them. She struggled to stay upright as frigid gusts tossed her this way and that. What did it matter that she could barely keep her eyes open? All she could see was white. Was she even moving forward? She flapped her wings harder, and then, thwop, she fell to the ground. Lucy lay there stunned. For a moment, she could not move. Heavy flakes of wet snow piled on her. She knew it would not be long before they covered her up completely. With a mighty effort, she struggled to her feet and leaned into the fierce winds. Amid the pelting snow, there were fragrant whiffs of something else, something friendly. Tea, she said aloud, cocoa, and pastries. She listened and heard the faint, muffled buzz of cheery voices. Following the fragrant whiffs and the faint murmurs, she hopped through the blizzard to an opening between snow-laden boughs of an evergreen. She found herself at the door of a tea room. I'll just stop in, she said to herself, and wait for the storm to pass. Inside the tea room, everyone was talking about the weather. Snowy weather puts me in a holiday mood. I'm thinking of hibernating. It's so weathery. This weather is nuts, right? This weather is good for business. Well, almost everyone found me a nice basket of dried up fruits this morning. Perfect for winter cake. Lucy's ears perked up. Lucy turned and saw a tall, sleek animal with small round ears speaking to the server as he paid his bill. He held a basket filled with beautiful, dried-up fruits, apples, berries, and plums, apricots, grapes, and cherries. She couldn't hear all of what he said. It was so noisy, but she heard enough. Hastily, she paid for her tea and biscuit and hurried after the vile beast. It's Snow Joe, ha ha ha. I guess cakes make me happy. I don't mind the weather. Any idea who this might belong to? Just tell me where. I'm sure I'll take it to him. There it is, Thomas's dried up fruit. I feel as if someone is following me. Outside, the storm had ended as quickly as it began. I don't know what I'll do, but I must do something. I must be imagining it. Already, the winter sun was turning the top of the snow crisp and sparkly. But wait, what's this? The good-for-nothing fruit thief was knocking on a door, Thomas's door. The door opened and Thomas stood in the doorway. I think this may be yours, said the scoundrel. I found it in the meadow. Someone at the tea shop told me where to find you. Oh my, said Thomas. Thank you so much. My pleasure, said the stranger. A holiday without winter cake is a poor one indeed. Good afternoon, then. The stranger turned and walked away, whistling a cheery tune. As he passed the bush where Lucy sat, he glanced up absent-mindedly and said, "Lovely day, what?" Lucy managed to close her beak. Then she opened it and said, "Yes, isn't it?" Lucy fluttered down and pecked at Thomas's door. "So many visitors," he said when he opened it. "What a spectacular day this is. I am jubilant, extra happy." Lucy hopped inside. She told him your tale. "I feel so foolish," she said. "I jumped to conclusions." "Everyone makes mistakes," said Thomas. "I feel foolish too. I remember now that I sat my basket down to catch snowflakes on my tongue. The first flakes of the season are the most scrumptious. I guess I forgot to pick it back up." Thomas smiled. "How kind of him, though," he said. "What a noble chap." "Yes," said Lucy. "Let's make him a winter cake," said Thomas. "Yes," said Lucy, "let's." So they chopped, they sifted, they measured, they poured and they stirred. They almost forgot the walnuts. More chopping, more stirring. They popped the pan into the oven and set the timer. While the cake baked, they sang songs and gossiped. The winter cake, when it came out, was beauty. Golden brown with bits of color like jewels. It smelled divine. Thomas drizzled the white icing over it like snow on a lumpy hillside. He lifted it onto a pretty plate and tied a ribbon around it. "I've thought of something," said Lucy. "What?" said Thomas. "We don't know where this guy lives," said Lucy. "We don't even know his name." Said Thomas. "That's true." The two friends looked at one another. They looked at the winter cake on its plate with the ribbon. They looked down at their shadows, blue shapes on the snow. A trail of crispy footprints led from where they stood away through the forest. "That's it," cried Lucy. "We can follow his footprints." "Yes," said Thomas. "Off we go." And off they went. At first, it was easy. But soon there were obstacles. They're having to step on stones across the stream. And difficulties. Now they're having to swim across the stream where Thomas is, Lucy's flying. There were icy streams and tangled thickets. Daylight dwindled. Our friend must be a agile fellow. He is certainly slender. In the murky twilight, Thomas and Lucy did not see the precipice. It's a sturdy winter cake, a resilient winter cake. It might have bounced on a pointy rock. The pretty plate was broken, but the winter cake wasn't. Still, it was cold and dark, and they were far from home. Lost, perhaps. The shivering friends huddled together for warmth. "Thomas," said Lucy, "I see a light." "Is it the light of heaven?" asked Thomas. "No," said Lucy. "Well, maybe. Sort of. I think it's from a candle or a small fire. Look." Thomas looked, and sure enough, a faint glow shone from a crevice in the darkness. Cautiously, they crept toward it. As they drew near, they heard humming. They arrived at the opening of a hollow in the bank. They peered inside, and there he was. He sat alone next to a stub of burning cattail. He hummed furiously and festively. Then abruptly he stopped. "It's no use," he said. "Hum as I might, it's winter's eve, and I am all alone. I ask you, what kind of holiday is that?" Lucy stepped inside the hollow. "But you're not alone," she said. "Gah!" shrieked the poor fellow, jumping to his hind feet. "Gah!" squawked Lucy, hiding her head under her wing. "Gah!" bellowed Thomas, flinging the winter cake into the air. It fell to the ground. This time it broke. "We come in peace," said Thomas, bearing winter cake, which is in pieces. Ha ha, pieces. Get it? "Oh," said the flustered stranger, "it's you, and you. Oh, me, oh my, come in, would you like some?" He looked around the bare, dismal hollow. "I'm afraid there isn't anything," he said. "I've only just moved in." "There's winter cake," said Thomas, picking up the pieces. "There's light, there's you, and there's us. What more do we need?" "Let's build the fire up a bit, though," said Lucy. They stepped outside and gathered sticks for a fire. Soon it burned merrily, warming them as they sat in its glow. "We traveled a long way to find you," said Thomas. "However did you come to be in our neck of the woods? And how did you come to be here? Also, what is your name?" Their host laughed. "I'm Tobin," he said, "and it all started with a mistake." "So many good things do," said Lucy. "Tell us yours." Outside the hollow, snow was falling again. Inside, a friendship was being born. Tobin's story was the first of many told that night, and for years and holidays to come. The three friends made a tradition of taking their winter cake to a bare hollow and telling stories around a merry fire. I ask you, what kind of a holiday is that? A jubilant one, you might say. Extra happy, a little bit mysterious, a wonderful holiday, every time. Joy and woe are woven fine, wrote William Blake. And in this we rightly know safely through the world we go. Because we daily live the truth in the poet's words, we pause each time we gather to worship, wherever and however we gather, to share our joys and sorrows into the embrace of this beloved community, knowing that whether we hear them aloud or hold them in our hearts, in the mysterious ways of love, we hold them together.
Good morning. I'm lighting two candles today. The first is from my longtime friend, Gary Polachek, who 8 days ago had a heart attack and died. And his funeral service was Friday in Wyndham, Minnesota. I met Gary through my brother Roger. Gary and Roger in 1968 went into basic and advanced Army training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, as a part of the Mankato Army Reserve. I've been a long-time friend with Gary. Gary was a type of a person, he had a great mind, and a great sense of humor. He was a real storyteller, and he was the type of person that after I spent time with him, I felt better about life. The second channel is from my partner, Nora. She is a very busy person, as most of you are aware. Today, we'll be seeing her perform with the Mary Players at the Lincoln Community Theater. She's been a long-term prop person extraordinary for that group. And today she actually is on stage with a speaking part. In her busy life, I'm very happy that she's found something that she enjoys spending her time doing.
I regret that I don't remember his name, but I saw on NPR this week that the whistleblower who brought attention to all the torture going on in the world died, and so did an activist in Chile, a woman who was an environmentalist. And I regret that I don't remember their names. I don't have my phone with me, or I would quickly look. Because I feel like they deserve our knowing and remembering their names. But I feel so grateful for the brave souls who are the whistleblowers and the activists, and I'm sure there's many other, nameless, unknown people doing these brave things, but those, I just feel so much gratitude for what they were willing to do.
I light a candle this morning for the victims and the survivors and the families of the school shooting in Michigan. And the candle also stands for all the unknown and unnamed victims of gun violence in our country and around the world. And I light a final candle for all that remains unspoken. Let us hold all of our joys and sorrows in a spirit of meditation. This might be the only lesson of the religious life, that we are not in control, not of the workings of the universe, nor of our companions within it. Until we learn this lesson into our hearts, into our bones, into the workings of our cells, We are called to wait. Wait against our desire, wait against our nature. For if we have not accepted that we are not in control, then we will anticipate and wait. Wait for the rising of the sun, and for the day the light will lengthen and grow strong. Even wait as the days still grow shorter. Wait for hearts to change. Wait for gestures and words of love. Wait for minds to change. Wait for acts of justice and words of reconciliation. Wait for the days to be accomplished, that love should be born. Wait, oh, wait for the shifting of our own spirit. For its motions too lie not in our control, but in the fullness of time, hastened only when we give ourselves over to the waiting. Amen. The ongoing life and work of this beloved church depends upon our gifts to it. The morning offering will be given and received here in the sanctuary. Those of you watching from afar are welcome to send checks to the church address. We will recite in grateful thanksgiving for gifts both given and received. Hymn number 402, From You I Receive, side A. We'll read it through once, and then side B, and then all of us together. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Our first reading this morning, a poem, Christmas, 1970, by Sandra M. Castillo. We resemble the silver tree, our translated lives, its luminous branches numbered to fit into its body, place its metal roots to decorate our first Christmas. Mother finds herself opening, closing the Red Cross box she will carry into 1976, like an unwanted door prize, a timepiece, a stubborn fact, an emblem of exile measuring our days, marked by the moment of our departure, our lives no longer arranged. Somewhere there is a photograph, a Polaroid Mother cannot remember was ever taken. I am sitting under Tia Terry's Christmas tree, her first apartment in this, our new world. My sister's by my side. I wear a white dress, black boots, an 8-year-old's resignation. May and Mitzi, age 4, wear red and white snowflake sweaters and identical smile. On this, our first Christmas away from ourselves. The future, unreal, unmade. Mother will cry into the new year with Lydia and Emerito, our elderly neighbors downstairs, who realize what we are too young to understand. Even a map cannot show you the way back to a place that no longer exists. Our second reading is from The Best Christmas Pageant Ever by Barbara Robinson. I read from it every Christmas Eve. It's about the year the bullies took over the church Christmas pageant. This selection is not one that I read on Christmas Eve. I'll preface it by saying when the mother who is directing the pageant gets hassled by church members about having the bullies in the pageant, she finally gets angry and says, "This is going to be the best Christmas pageant ever." Well, it was the best Christmas pageant we ever had. Everybody said so, but nobody seemed to know why. When it was over, people stood around in the lobby of the church talking about what was different this year. There was something special, everyone said. They couldn't put their finger on what. Mrs. Wendelkin said, "Well, Mary, the mother of Jesus, had a black eye. That was something special." But only what you expect, she added. She meant that it was the most natural thing in the world for a herdman to have a black eye. But actually, nobody hit Imogene, and she didn't hurt anyone else. Her eye wasn't really black either, just puffy and swollen. She had walked into the corner of the choir robe cabinet in a kind of daze, as if she had just caught on to the idea of God and the wonder of Christmas. Christmas just came over Imogene all at once, like a case of chills and fever. And so she was crying and walking into furniture. Afterwards, there were candy canes and little tiny testaments for everyone, and a poinsettia plant for my mother from the whole Sunday school. We put the costumes away and folded up the collapsible manger, and just before we left, my father snuffed out the last of the tall white candles. "I guess that's everything," he said as we stood at the back of the church. "All over now." It was quite a pageant. Then he looked at my mother. "What's that you've got?" "It's the ham," she said. "They wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't take any candy either, or any of the little Bibles. But Imogene did ask me for a set of the Bible story pictures, and she took out the Mary picture and said it was exactly right, whatever that means." I think it meant that no matter how she herself was, Imogene liked the idea of the Mary in the picture, all pink and white and pure looking, as if she never washed the dishes or cooked supper or did anything at all except have Jesus on Christmas Eve. Here are the readings. For him, let Christmas come. This starts with the unison part, and then it goes into A. Let Christmas come.
Its story told. When days are short and minutes are cold. Let Christmas come. Its lovely song. When evening soon and night is long. Let Christmas come. Its great star glow on quiet city parks of snow. Let Christmas come. Its table green. Love born again. The truth of a dream.
In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged, and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The story of the birth of Jesus of Nazareth and the story about Santa Claus are the two Christmas stories in widespread circulation in middle-class, middle American culture. But there are others. A Charlie Brown Christmas, full of disappointment and hope. How the Grinch stole Christmas. His heart grew 3 sizes that day. It's a Wonderful Life. A reaffirmation of the worth of common decency and the power of love. A Christmas Carol. God bless us, everyone. Christmas stories are set primarily in December with references to either the primary religious story, Jesus' birth, or the primary secular story, Santa Claus, somewhere in their narrative. We read them aloud year after year in church or to the grandkids on Christmas Eve. We watch them on endless loops on a dozen different channels. We remake them every decade or so. They're so familiar that we forget sometimes their stories. They seem more than that, bigger than that, truer than that. As a hospital chaplain many years ago, I was paged to a unit where an elderly person had just died and was asked to bring a bell with me. The family wanted the bell rung unseen so that the grandchild who had been present at the bedside would hear it and know that their grandparent had gotten their angel wings. That was a grieving family that for God, It's a Wonderful Life is a story, not theology belonging to any Christian church. I've never seen Elf. Go ahead and gasp. I haven't gotten into the Hallmark Ion Christmas movie thing. And in recent years, I've come to despise Rudolph, the television show, not the song, because of how cruel all the adults are, even Santa, until Rudolph can do something for them. On the other hand, the most recent remake of The Grinch delights me. I enjoy the stop-action Santa Claus is Coming to Town so much I bought the DVD so I could see it even if the broadcast schedule didn't mesh with mine. An audio recording of my dad reading "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" is a treasured possession. I almost always enjoy a good retelling of a Christmas carol. You all have your favorite Christmas stories, and probably some that you despise as well. And even with a hefty collection of despised stories, shows, or songs, there's enough staying power, enough eternal truth, enough hope and joy in the classics, whether centered on the story of the Nativity or the story of Santa Claus, St. Nick's, Papa Noel, that character types such as Scrooge or Grinch have entered our lexicon, and even the biblical nativity story has been subjected to revisionist interpretation. 3 wise women would have asked for directions, brought hot dish, and stayed to help with the laundry. Our Christmas stories are beloved and important, and I look forward all year to telling favorites and discovering new ones and making them relevant to our lives in 21st century rural Minnesota. But this year, I am equally interested in our stories about Christmas. They are plentiful too, and like the Christmas stories, some are beloved and some are despised, and each of us has a slightly different list of beloved and despised stories about Christmas. These stories also, like Christmas stories, are true, but they are not the whole truth, nor are they nothing but the truth. One of the stories about Christmas says it is a Christian holiday celebrating the birth of Jesus. True, to some degree. Christmas is a holy day on the Christian calendar, and it does celebrate the birth of Jesus. That is to say, the biblical stories of his conception and birth and events surrounding them are told in the weeks leading up to and following December 25th. And many of the songs and visual representations of the stories season tell those same stories. However, as we know and have known for some time now, the birth of Jesus probably didn't happen in December. Early church fathers deliberately layered a celebration of the birth of Jesus on top of the Roman festival of Saturnalia, in a kind of if you can't beat them co-op from the news. It was a successful co-opting in that most folks, generally speaking, accept this story about Jesus without complaint, even the ones who understand the historical inaccuracies and know the history of how it came to be. But it was also an unsuccessful attempt to recast a pagan festival as a Christian holy day, in that the old symbols and traditions survive as part of the festival to this day. And pagan midwinter traditions and symbols from other parts of the world have been added to the mix. Candles from ancient Rome, gift-giving from Rome by way of Babylonia, holly from Druids by way of ancient Greece, ornaments from Germanic pagans, trees and wreaths from ancient Romans and ancient Greeks. Another story we tell about Christmas is that Mary and Joseph and their soon-to-be child, having been turned away from the inn and given shelter in the stable, are symbols of the forgotten, of those at the edges of society who are often turned away from suitable housing, denied affordable housing, and given shelter in substandard places. But theologians and biblical scholars have been arguing since at least the 16th century that we have been misinterpreting and mistranslating the biblical text. They argue that because Jesus was of the house and lineage of David, he would have had relatives in Bethlehem and would have stayed with them, not at a public inn, and that first century homes in Palestine had living space for the family on an upper floor with space for the animals beneath. And it is therefore likely that that is the space Mary and Joseph occupied if the upper area was already full of family. Nestled among the animals, yes, but also under the same roof as everyone else. To start telling the story this way might seem to upend all our Christmas messages about the paradox and power of God being born in infant form to parents alone and far from home. But an infant is an infant, fragile and wholly dependent, an unlikely avatar of the Almighty, even if aunties and uncles and cousins crowded around the manger with the cow and the donkey. And while the messaging would be different, would it be any less powerful to tell of a sort of middle-class man born in the embrace of extended family in Dad's hometown, who nevertheless grew up to preach that even as we do to the least of his siblings, we do to him? Grew up to break bread with thieves and prostitutes and outsiders? Told that way, wouldn't the message be just as radical, if not more so? There's one story about Christmas that should be mentioned, but is hardly worth our time. The nugget of truth in it being so tiny and so twisted and so distorted. That's the story of a war on Christmas, raged more furiously with each passing year in evil, secular, multicultural U.S. society. What there is, rather than a coordinated attempt to repress the holiday, what there is a growing acknowledgement that not all of us are Christians. Not all Christians celebrate Christmas. And our founding statesmen wrote protection for our multi-religious society into the First Amendment to our Constitution. Now, some stories about Christmas are more troublesome and personal than the ones I've discussed so far. We tell stories about how Christmas always is in our family or our church. Stories of what makes Christmas Christmas. Stories of the perfect Christmases in years gone by. We not only tell these stories about Christmas, we tend to believe them. So when we come to hard and difficult times, economic downturns, a pandemic, recent deaths, or other losses still besetting us with grief and making Herculean tasks of the most mundane activities of daily life, when we come to hard and difficult times, the Christmas we manage to muster for ourselves, our children, our family, feels like a failure. So far as it falls from the story about how Christmas always is, and from the one about what makes Christmas Christmas, and especially far from the one about how perfect all previous Christmases were. One version of the way Christmas always is story is that the kids always hurry to bed in their matching PJs after the Christmas Eve church service so as to hasten the moment of Santa's arrival. And the table always looks like it belongs on Pinterest. The relatives arrive on time with bags of perfectly wrapped gifts to add to the bounty already under the tree. And the pet wears its red ribbon or felt antlers adorably all day long. Another version of the story says it isn't Christmas if the kids aren't awake before dawn, while the parents have been awake until dawn, putting together a bicycle. It isn't Christmas if Dad's mashed potatoes aren't lumpy and Aunt Hagatha doesn't get tipsy. It isn't Christmas without toddler meltdowns, teenage attitudes, and political arguments round the tree. Whichever story we tell, the Pinterest perfect one, with Mary looking as if she never washed the dishes or cooked supper or did anything at all except have Jesus on Christmas Day, or the always disaster one in which Mary has a black eye, we end discontent when this year's Christmas falls short. And inevitably we ask, what is wrong with me, with us? What is wrong with me that I couldn't make this year's Christmas as perfect as all the others? Not a thing. Because in fact, all the others were only perfect in our selective memory. What is wrong with me that Christmas with a sober Aunt Agatha, though much less awkward and destructive than a holiday with a drunken Aunt Agatha, just doesn't feel like Christmas? What is wrong with me that I miss the political arguments now that so-and-so has left the family? Not a thing. Because alcoholism is a family disease, and what feels familiar feels right, even when we wish it another way. And because loss is loss is loss. Last year, we almost all, if not all, had to step outside of the script of what makes Christmas Christmas for our loved ones and ourselves and our church. Some of us found Zoom gatherings unacceptable for this 1 year only alternative. Some of us enjoyed the respite from travel and the intimacy of small celebrations with only those who share our roofs and our rooms year-round. Some of us missed baby's first Christmas or beloved's last Christmas, and the pain of each was real and rending and is still a little tender nearly a year later. And all of us, I'm sure, thought Christmas 2020 was a season out of time, one of a kind, one we'd look back upon with good riddance or good humor, or both, but never repeat. After all, the last pandemic was more than a century ago. Next year, we said then, Christmas will be as it always was in our family, our home, our church. Next year, we'll be back to what makes Christmas Christmas. And now, next year has come, and with it the Omicron variant of COVID-19 before Delta has even waned. Next year has come with uncertainty about the safety of travel and gatherings, even for those who have been vaccinated and boosted. Next year has come, and I guess some people are living as if in a post-pandemic world, but many, most, still engage in a careful calculus of risk and reward when planning days and activities and holidays. Next year has come here at Nora Church with 5 deaths since last Christmas, 2 in the past month. It's come with great discontent about what's still not allowed in worship, and simultaneous great fear about gathering too closely too soon. Worship planning is complicated by all that has changed and not changed in our membership and in terms of the pandemic, by the reduction of my time to 50%, and by differing levels of comfort and aptitude for online gathering and worshiping. We're about to enter next month a season of the year when there will be just one Sunday service per month here at Nora. But first, we have December, without a celebration of the solstice that was so meaningful and satisfying 2 years in a row, with only 2 Sunday services, and with Christmas Eve worship in a format not yet determined. Nothing seems as it always was, even knowing that nothing ever was as we remember it always being. I think Lynn Ray Perkins, author and illustrator of today's story, made up the holiday of Winter's Eve, though it's probably an oblique reference to solstice. Even though we are nearly 3 weeks out from Christmas, this is my only December Sunday service this year, and I thought I'd probably read a more Christmassy story story to you, but I found just what I was looking for in winter cake. Outside the hollow, snow was falling again. Inside, a friendship was being born. Tobin's story was the first of many told that night and for years and holidays to come. The three friends made a tradition of taking their winter cake to a bare hollow and telling stories around a merry fire. I ask you, what kind of holiday is that? A jubilant one, we might say. Extra happy, a little bit mysterious, a wonderful holiday every time. A wonderful holiday every time, not a perfect one. Thomas and Lucy and Tobin created a new tradition out of a circumstance born of a mistake. For them, that new tradition became what made Winter's Eve, Winter's Eve. So it has always been for us and for generations and for millennia before us. We add the birth of the Son of God to the birth of the fireball Son. We attach Christian meaning to pagan symbols. We meld a Dutch saint with a Norse sun god and an Aryan lord of the winds. We play year after year the particular songs that were current when our families were forming. Gene Autry's Rudolph, or John Denver and the Muppets' Silent Night. Rafi's Must Be Santa, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. We put the in-laws linguine with clam sauce on the table next to the roast beef. It's all new the first time. After that, it's all what makes Christmas, Christmas. Christmas at Nora this year won't be the stuff of some ecclesiastical Pinterest post. And probably Christmas at your house won't be the one some family sees on Pinterest next year and tries to emulate. Even a map cannot show us the way back to a place that no longer exists. But if we tell ourselves a new story about Christmas, a story that describes our holiday just as it is because it can be no other way, and if there are friends and family in the story, whether in the same room or the same Zoom, and if we remember when someone asks what kind of holiday is that, to answer a jubilant one, extra happy, a little bit mysterious, then your Christmas and our Christmas will be wonderful this time and every time. Amen. For him, O come, Emmanuel. O come, Emmanuel, and with your captive children dwell. Give comfort to all exiles here, and to the aching heart it cheer. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come within as love to dwell. O come, in splendor very bright, as joy that never yields to night. O come and turn our hearts to peace, that greed and war at last shall cease. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come within as truth
finish without care, to render every act of prayer. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come within as old to dwell.
The words for extinguishing our chalice are in the order of service. Let's read them in unison.
The flame has been doused, but the fire of our community still burns. In this moment, we become beacons on the prairie, bearers of light and warmth, until we gather again to refill our communal chalice.
Every day is a fresh beginning. Listen to the glad refrain. In spite of old sorrows and old stories, troubles forecasted and possible pain, take heart with the day and begin again. Amen.